The Battle of Hill 60, known as Bomba Tepe or Flat Hill by its Turkish defenders, was the last roll of the dice for British forces attempting to capture the Gallipoli Peninsula in 1915. This 60-foot-high mound of dirt and scrub would become a fiery hellhole that survivors would struggle to extinguish from their memories for the rest of their lives. Following the modest gains of the failed August offensive, commanders attempted to augment the fragile line between the Suvla Bay and ANZAC sectors. The obstacle, a protrusion in the line held by the Turks, Hill 60. After a preliminary bombardment, a multinational force, including the Gurkhas of the Indian Brigade, Ireland's Connaught Rangers, the 10th Hampshires, the New Zealand Mounted Rifles, and the 4th Australian Battalion, advanced on Hill 60 on the 21st of August. The defending Turks responded with small arms, machine gun and shrapnel, withdrawing to their second line of trenches. The New Zealand Mounted Rifles reached the Turkish line, but they were isolated and exposed, with British and Australian units held up on their flanks. On the slope beneath Hill 60, disaster struck the attackers as a shell burst ignited the tinder-dry scrub, engulfing the battlefield in fire. Wounded men and troops seeking cover were consumed by the flames. Those attempting to escape, being burnt alive, were shot by the enemy. Bombs and ammunition caught in the encroaching fire went off randomly, turning Hill 60 into a hellscape. Many brave men, including medical officers and chaplains, paid the ultimate price by breaking cover and attempting to rescue the wounded from no man's land. The bones of many would be found scattered across the slope at the end of the war. For almost a week, after a number of attempts to capture the summit and repelling Turkish counterattacks, British forces maintained a toehold on the western slope of the hill. Western Australia's 10th Lighthorse, a regiment still depleted and traumatised by the disastrous battle at the Neck a fortnight earlier, were chosen as reinforcements sent to capture Hill 60. At 1 a.m. on the 29th of August, 160 men of the 10th Lighthorse charged into no man's land, their objective a trench on the peak of Hill 60. Capturing it with light losses, they were ordered to dig in. Trooper Sid Liversey described the scene. "We were walking over the dead and fighting over them all night. Outside the trenches, they were lying everywhere, in front of us, behind us, and on all sides. I never thought I would see such an awful sight. There were dead Australians, New Zealanders, Turks and Englishmen all mixed up. Some had been killed days before." The Turks counterattacked ferociously all night to wrestle back the trench and engaged in bombing duels with the light horsemen. Second Lieutenant Hugo Throssell of the 10th inspired his comrades with a fierce defence of the captured trench, personally killing up to 7 Turks and showing no concern for his own safety. As the fight continued into the next day, Throssell's injuries mounted: shrapnel wounds to the head, a bullet wound to the neck, a torn left shoulder, and abrasions to his hands, legs and feet. After medical treatment, Throssell attempted to go back into the fray, but due to blood loss and concussion, he was ordered off the battlefield and sent to the hospital ship. Finally, machine guns arrived on Hill 60 to reinforce the Australian position, but they would go no further. The Turks held the vital northern slope facing Suvla Bay. The Battle of Hill 60 would be the last major assault of the Gallipoli campaign. For his actions on Hill 60, Hugo Throssell was awarded his nation's highest military honour, the Victoria Cross. He was repatriated back to Australia, but rejoined his beloved 10th Lighthorse to fight in the Palestine campaign. After the war, Throssell tried to adjust to normal life, getting married and becoming a father, but in 1933, the veteran of the Neck and Hill 60 took his life while sitting on his front veranda. He was 49.